Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our LGBTQ plus family building event. Tonight, we are in partnership with the Center for Advanced Reproductive Services up in Hartford, and we are excited to be bringing this program to you. My name is Patrick Dunn. I am the executive director here at the New Haven Pride Center, or there, because I'm in my house right now, which is not the center. And I'm really excited to welcome you to this evening. I use he, him pronouns. So before we begin today's program and I introduce our amazing moderator, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that the New Haven Pride Center was founded and operates on the traditional lands of the Mohegan, the Manshatucket Pequot, the Eastern Pequot, the Shattucoke, the Golden Hill Pawcatuck, the Wampanoag, the Niantic, and the Quinnipiac peoples. We hope that wherever you are, you will take a moment to acknowledge and honor the Native peoples whose lands you occupy and the history of the place that you are in. If you'd like to find out more about Native lands, you can go to native/land.ca. So now, because we don't want to just listen to me talking about stuff, I'm going to introduce our amazing moderator, Scot Haney. Where are you? There you are. Yay, Scott. So I'm putting you are now in charge, Scott.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Patrick, for that introduction. Hi, everybody. Scot Haney here. I don't have any kids, but I'm very supportive of those who do. And, maybe it's never too late. You never know. All right. I'm 57. Who knows? Maybe by the time I'm 60, I'll have a brood. Anyway, nice to see all of you. So at this point, I'd just like to introduce the panel so that we can get to know the panel. And forgive me, I'm not great at names. I do apologize because I'm sure I'm not going to get them right. So just jump in and correct me. First of all, Patrick Dunn, as we just heard, the executive director of New Haven Pride Center. And Patrick, it's so nice to see you.
Great to see you. It's been years. I don't think I've seen you in person since I lived in Hartford like 16 years ago.
Yeah, which is a long time. We have to fix that.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, we have Kathy Pagnotti. Kathy, did I get your name right?
Yes, you did.
Oh God, I love you, Kathy. Thank you so much. Kathy's got a little feedback coming in, but we're good. All right, there it goes. Third-party reproduction manager for CARS, and she's going to be talking about family building options. Kathy, it's so nice to see you.
Thank you for having us tonight.
Tell us Yeah, you got a little feedback going. That's okay. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Kathy.
Say that again.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So I'm a registered nurse at the center. I'm the third-party reproduction manager. Can you guys hear me or hear over that?
Yeah, it's very...
Kathy, do you have it playing anywhere else? Like, do you have it open on the stream? Because if you do, that would be creating the feedback.
Do I have what? I'm sorry.
Do you have the stream open on any other device?
No.
Oh.
Nope. And now she's gone. Well, we're going to welcome back Kathy. We're going to move on in the meantime. Riva Makajani. Riva, did I get that right?
Yes, that was great.
Oh, my God. All right. Riva is, she's a doctor, reproduction, endocrinology, and infertility fellow at UConn School of Medicine. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Riva Makijani. I'm a fellow, which means I've done my OBGYN residency and I'm completing my fellowship in the subspecialty of reproductive endocrinology and infertility. I'll be graduating in 2 weeks.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And then I'm actually joining the group at CARS, so I'll be staying on board.
Oh, that's wonderful. All right, Kathy, you're back.
I hope I'm back.
Oh, you're back and you're better than ever.
Okay. All right. So my name is Kathy. I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for 32 years. Most of my experience is in med-surg and labor and delivery within a hospital setting. 7 years ago, I joined CARS as a nurse in the third-party reproduction program, which I think to date, although I've loved all my jobs, this is for sure the best place for me. I love what I do.
That is really wonderful. Thank you. All right, and Doug, I'm going to go Nejam. Nejam. Oh, yeah. I got almost all of them right. I apologize, Doug. Okay. And Doug is he's an attorney with the Yale Law School. Doug, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm on the faculty at Yale at the law school and also at the Child Study Center, and I work on parental recognition and particularly families formed through assisted reproduction and families formed by LGBTQ people. And I was able to have the pleasure of working on the Connecticut Parentage Act, which you'll hear more about, that updates our Connecticut laws in ways that are very good for families formed through assisted reproduction and LGBTQ families, and had the pleasure to work with Kathy and Patrick on trying to pass that law and others at CARS who were very supportive of the effort. And it will go into effect in January, so I'll be able to tell folks about that.
Oh, that's really wonderful. You know, part of me went to Yale, only a part. I had a biopsy done and they sent it to the lab. That's about as close to Yale as I got. Okay, so this is our esteemed board, and we're very excited to have all of you. And we're going to start opening. We're going to just start with Patrick. Patrick, tell us a little bit about the New Haven Pride Center.
Scott, I think that we have one more guest, though.
Oh, we do? Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot the Trellies. Hey, guys.
Hey, thanks, Scott. That's all right.
And you're two of my favorite people, and I can't believe I missed you.
Yeah.
All right, so this is Stephanie and Rebecca. And hi, guys. How are you? Tell us about yourselves.
We're good. We're very happy to be here. I think we get to share a little bit more about ourselves a bit later, but we have the awesome opportunity to work with Kathy at the center. We've been with them now for
almost a year.
Yeah.
It's been great.
And you guys have been together since 7/17/17.
Yes.
Yeah. Engaged in 18, married.
And then you got married on
18.
That's fantastic. I love it. Well, again, I apologize. Thank you so much for everybody for joining us. Kathy and Reva and Doug and Patrick and Rebecca and Steph. This is going to be a very educational evening. So I'm looking forward to it. All right. So Patrick, we're going to start with you. Back to you. Tell us a little bit about the New Haven Pride Center.
Yeah, sure. So the New Haven Pride Center, we are located in downtown New Haven, right on Orange Street in the 9th Square. We're one of 2 LGBTQ plus community centers here in the state of Connecticut. We do everything and anything you could possibly imagine and more. What I like to always say is that everything we do falls into one or more of our 5 areas of focus, which includes case management and support services, bringing people together for shared experiences, arts, culture, and humanities events, youth empowerment, and LGBTQ plus advocacy work, which includes stuff at the city, the state level, and just as of 2 hours ago, the federal level, even sometimes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's just true. I will share a little history. When I first met one of my first boyfriends back in 1991. I was afraid of coming out, and I didn't want anybody in New York and Long Island to know that I was gay. So I would drive to New Haven to have my tests done because I wouldn't sleep with anybody unless I got tested. So I would actually drive from Long Island to New Haven and get all my testing done.
New Haven's a great place for a lot of people.
Yeah, it really is. All right. So how can medical organizations break down barriers and make themselves more accessible to the LGBTQ community?
So, number one thing is really making sure you have a really comprehensive education around how people are going to be treated when they walk into your office, and make sure that you're prepared that, there's a lot of different types of people in the world. And just like we go through trainings and are prepared for any person to walk in the door, we need to make sure that that includes LGBTQ plus people. Literally an hour and 15 minutes ago, I was presenting to IRIS, which is an incredible nonprofit here in New Haven that works with refugee communities. One of the questions said, well, how can we make sure our policies are inclusive of LGBTQ people and make sure that, and the answer is very simple. It's treat LGBTQ people exactly the way you want to treat everybody else. It's really that simple. You don't need to write a special policy for us. You don't need to create some brand new thing for queer people. It's just about making sure that you respect people for people and you honor them when they're in your space. And yes, maybe with a person who's LGBTQ, particularly maybe someone who might be trans or non-binary, you might need to know and learn some special language because you want to make sure that you're using language that's up to date and not coming across like you don't know what you're talking about when maybe you do. But other than that, really, we're just like everybody else in a lot of ways. And at the end of the day, all we really care about is having a good experience and getting, if we're sick or if we're looking for services, to get those services in a way that doesn't involve like a traumatic experience emotionally. And so, I don't like to say we're just like you because I feel like that was a really bad slogan that was invented in 90s LGBTQ advocacy work. But when it comes to medical issues and it comes to like how we want to be treated, we just want to be treated like everybody else. And you don't need a special policy. Just make sure your policy is enforced for us.
You've been around, Patrick. You look like you're 26, but I don't know how.
Oh, I'll take that. I'm definitely not.
Okay, so how have we come and how have we progressed? Are we doing okay? Do we, I know we need obviously more advocacy, but what do you think?
Well, so I'll say this. I think, yes, the community as a whole has had a lot of really important wins. Doug's going to talk about this later, but the Parentage Act is a great example of the major wins in Connecticut and the ways in which Connecticut leads. We had the most comprehensive trans protection bill in the early 2000s. We were one of the first states to enact marriage equality. We've had bills and laws that protect families and young people for years. You look at trans inclusion in sports, that's been in a law in Connecticut a very long time. We were one of the first states to ban conversion therapy. We've done a lot of really great things in our state. That doesn't mean there isn't much work to do. There's still, just like every other part of the community, there are things that we need to continue to work towards to find that true moment of equity where we're all on an even playing field. And we always have to remember, well, yes, there might be a law that protects people from discrimination in the workplace. It doesn't mean that it's not happening, right? And so we have to be conscious that, yes, maybe we have really good laws and, we can debate semantics around maybe certain laws need to be wordsmithed better, right? But at the end of the day, we have really good protections in our state, but we don't always have the best enforcement of those protections. And that's kind of the next thing that we need to really look at. And we also need to be conscious that as a community, LGBTQ people have one of the most diverse backgrounds of experience than any minority community. I don't say that to like put down any community. I just mean that we have a little bit of everybody in our community, which means that we experience as a community the same issues that the broader world experiences. Like, for example, being a Black trans woman walking into a medical practice, you're not only dealing with maybe somebody who is transphobic or doesn't have the correct training to deal with a trans patient, but you might be also experiencing racism, and you might be also experiencing, bias based on socioeconomic status or whatever the combination of factors are. And so I think that's the next layer of thing that we really have to think about. Like, yes, we have these laws, we have these protections, we have this stuff going on in our community, but how is it making sure that everyone in our community is at the table and at the table with the same amount of chairs?
That's excellent. Thank you so much for that. And how does the New Haven Pride Center support family building rights and care within the LGBTQ community?
So fun fact, Connecticut is actually the largest or the highest percentage of LGBTQ parents in the entire country.
Really?
More LGBTQ parents here in Connecticut than any other state on a percentage basis. Obviously places like California probably have more individual parents, but we have a very parent-oriented LGBTQ community here in Connecticut. My partner is any kind of sampling of that, where he brings it up almost daily. We really have a lot of families here in Connecticut that build their families to include children. We are in a state that has a lot of really great protections, and even more so now thanks to the work of folks like Doug. But we, at the center, we like to center families in our programs. We do a lot of work with youth, and our youth and family programming is inclusive of families that have children as well. So we have things like fun social programs like Drag Artist Story Hour. And then we're also connected to other community groups, people like Tony Ferriolo, who work with families on a regular basis at Healthcare Advocates International, that work with families on a regular basis to make sure that if we don't have the service or the program that a family might be looking for, or a young person might be looking for, we can get them there without too many steps in between. So that's kind of how we participate. And then, of course, we obviously work with incredible organizations like the Center for Advanced Reproductive Services to connect LGBTQ people who want to start families that include having children with the resources they need, whether it's a sperm bank, egg donor, whatever it is, those services that they can get connected to.
Terrific. Thank you, Patrick. Anything else you'd like to share? I'm sure you'll pipe in a little later.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure I'll pipe in more.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. All right, we're going to move on to Kathy. Hi, Kath.
Hi again.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You're adorable. All right. Tell us a little bit about CARS, the Center for Advanced Reproductive Services. I know I have personally done work with the organization. We've done stories with you guys. I think you're an amazing organization, really helping people to strive to get their families. And, these are people who really had some of them have no other place to turn, and they've turned to you, and you guys have been able to help. So just enlighten us a little bit more about CARS.
Okay, so CARS is a fertility center. Anybody who needs help having a baby would come to us. Basically, we are a facility that has 4 state-of-the-art offices throughout Connecticut. We're in Farmington, Hartford, Brantford, and New London. We are so fortunate to have almost 7 board certified physicians who are specialists in reproductive endocrinology. They're known and renowned all over the world. And personally, I'm so proud to work here because I get to work with them. I've been a nurse for a long time, like I said, and I've heard about Dr. Benediva and Dr. Nolson and Dr. Schmidt all throughout my career. And when I was fortunate enough to get a random call from a recruiter 7 years back and found out it was CARS, I would have quit my job that day to come work at the center. We have an amazing laboratory with world-class technology. We have a state-of-the-art air system. So scientifically, we are among one of the best in the world. And we have recently been designated as an ASRM, the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, Nursing Center of Excellence, and Embryology Center of Excellence. So we're really proud of that. And we are people, we're people. To go off of what Patrick said, we're people who treat people. And I think we are people who give hope. Hope is one of my favorite words personally. Mm-hmm. And I think that's basically what we do. We give hope where there wasn't hope.
Now, do you think anyone would want to have my baby?
I think there's so many people who would want to help you have your baby. Yes. I'm going to go with yes. They're out there, Scott.
I see the ship. Kathy, I see the ship, and I think it sailed, but
it has not sailed.
It has not sailed. How do you guys help those within the LGBTQ community? You guys provide hope for everyone, mm-hmm. but LGBTQ communities can come to you as well.
Yes, they do. So I think what we do is offer options where perhaps you may have thought there were none. We offer hope. I think we offer a really down-to-earth, comfortable environment. We offer honesty. I think we are very accessible. We're a doctor's office where patients can call and say, let me talk to my nurse, and their nurse will answer the phone, or I really want to talk to the doctor. We're very accessible. We want questions. We have lots of answers, and I think we're just really open. We're really friendly. We really want to meet you. That's basically what we offer, with lots of specific help for men and women that I'll tell you about in a minute.
And where are you, Kathy? Which branch are you at?
I am in Farmington, and I have the pleasure of doing working. I would be the nurse for anybody who needed a third party to reproduce. So I get to work with all of the doctors, which I think is the best and the worst. I like to think of my job as like the tale of two cities. You know, it's the best of times, the worst of times. But I get to work with all people who need a donor or a gestational carrier, or both.
It's simply an amazing operation. I just think it's fantastic. All right, talk to us about family building options for lesbian women.
Okay, there are several, as our lovely Trellies can attest to. So lesbian women come to us lots of times as a couple. So we have lots of options with women because they have lots of reproductive pieces. So each patient meets with a physician. We do a thorough medical exam. We do basic lab work. We do fertility-related lab work. We do a medical assessment of their reproductive tract and reproductive organs. Then the doctor will gather all of that information and determine what plan is best for the patients in front of them. Sometimes it is to use a donor for sperm and inseminate one of the partners in the couple. Sometimes, like the Trellies, both women want to be a biological part of this child and their offspring. So in that case, they would need their third party, a donor. Sometimes a donor is somebody that they know, a family member, a friend, the friend of a friend. And sometimes it's an anonymous donor, and we help guide them towards reputable sperm banks in order to find a donor that's been screened carefully on an anonymous or non-directed route. Then one of the partners, maybe Stephanie, would undergo an oocyte retrieval. We would retrieve her eggs, inseminate them through the IVF process with donor sperm, and then maybe Rebecca, the partner, would carry the pregnancy. We would transfer the embryo to her uterus. She would carry the pregnancy that Stephanie and a donor sperm were involved in the conception, and it's kind of amazing at the end.
It really is. Is this covered by insurance, or is this, or talk to us about the insurance aspect?
Yeah, I will say sometimes, and certainly not as often as we wished it was, more and more employers are starting to recognize that needing a third party is a diagnosis of infertility. Mm-hmm. Generally, if it's not covered, the insurance company has decided that our patients do not have a diagnosis of infertility. They haven't had multiple tries at an insemination. They haven't, tried for 3 years. They have what we call like a mechanical infertility. We simply need to introduce sperm in a medical, technical way. And lots of times that isn't seen as a diagnosis of infertility, when in fact it really is. But we're finding that more and more insurance policies do have language in them that does provide services for our same-sex couples, for our trans people. They're not necessarily screaming it out, but it's there. And we really encourage you to feel brave enough and proud enough to reach out to your employers and your insurance companies and really scour the policy, because the money may be there.
The money may be there. Will you help people in the insurance aspect, or is it? Yes. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So every patient who comes in is assigned to a doctor, a nurse, and a financial service representative.
Oh, great.
For our LGBTQ community, because most of the time, or a lot of the time, it's not covered, the financial service representative will look at the policy for them. They will fight for any right that might possibly be there. They give patients information up front, even before they come for the appointment, so they know what they're looking at and they know what their options are. And our financial service representatives are amazing. I think the Trellies know they'll fight to the death for a benefit that is owed to one of our patients.
That's
Scott,
good.
Scott, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Just because I'm curious, Kathy, do you know how the state insurance, because Connecticut has a pretty high rate of folks on state insurance. Do you know how like Connecticut state insurance, how good they are about that?
Connecticut state insurance is probably the best insurance to have.
Wow, that's great. That's
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. All right, we're going to move on. Options for gay men, like two gentlemen who, how would they proceed?
They would proceed again by calling us, letting us know what their plans are. So sometimes it's a single man, sometimes it's a couple, two males. They would each meet with a physician. They would do a semen analysis, basic lab work, and then they would determine how they wanted to proceed. So sometimes one of the men is the sperm provider. Sometimes both of the men are sperm providers. And that's particularly exciting. Men need two women or two third parties to help them reproduce. They need an egg donor, and then they need a separate gestational carrier. So we do not participate with traditional surrogacy, which is where the same woman provides the eggs and carries the pregnancy. It's ethically messy, and we try to stay away from that. I think, in fact, it may be illegal in Connecticut. But anyway, the men would find an egg donor, either through word of mouth with friends and family, or we would connect them with egg banks, agencies who find donors. We carefully screen them. We would inseminate the eggs, either with the sperm of one of the men, or we would split the eggs in half and inseminate with each, half with each. And then the men decide, do they want to take the doctor's recommendation, which is what we generally recommend, to transfer the best embryo to the carrier. Sometimes they have a very strong feeling about which one of them wants to go first. Whose embryo do we want to transfer first? And they make those kinds of decisions. Sometimes the men don't want to know whose embryo we used, because we've had a couple of couples really explain to us the joy after the children are born of looking at these babies and seeing both of them in these children. They love that. And we do advise them for the medical health of the child to later find out, but they really love the not knowing. Gestational carrier is an amazing woman who is a mother and who signs on for a very risky protocol. Very risky. Pregnancy is risky. It's usually great. When it's bad, it's bad. But gestational carrier is a woman who signs on to carry a pregnancy for a couple. The relationships are really strongly and strictly screened here. The psychological, psychosocial, medical screening, and the relationships are amazing and usually long-lasting. And we love getting to know our men because they take a really, really deliberate path, as do our same-sex women, a really deliberate, really purposeful path to parenthood. And it's exciting. Like I can barely contain my excitement most of the time. Rita can attest. It's just amazing.
Kathy, this might sound like a stupid question, or this might be a question for Doug. And again, it could be completely stupid, but do I have to worry that the mother's, the carrier is going to, or the egg donor is going to get rights to the baby or things like that? Is there any concern of that, or is that all?
Not in Connecticut.
Not in Connecticut.
Yeah. So in Connecticut, as long as you're complying with law, the intended parents are the legal parents, and egg donors and people who serve as gestational surrogates do not have legal parental rights.
Okay, good. That makes me happy. All right, and Kathy, one last question for you. How do you get started? What do? You just drive up to Farmington or Brantford? What do you do?
You could do that, but with COVID regulations and all, we would ask that you call us at 1-844-HOPE-IVF. So it's 844-467-3483. or go to yukonfertility.com, and you can email us if that's easier, and we'll reach out to you to talk about next steps.
And do you think it's an easier journey for a male couple or a female couple? Or is it both the same?
I think it's hard for both. It's complicated. There's a lot that goes into it. I'm going to have to say perhaps it's easier for men because they generally haven't struggled with infertility. They haven't had bad reactions to hormones. They haven't had, losses. I think generally it's harder for women, whether same sex or heterosexual, possibly simply because of hormones. It's hard.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate every woman on this earth. All right. Let's move on to Dr. Riva. How are you, Doc? Everything good?
Yep, everything's good. Thank you.
All right. So you're going to talk to us about options available to transgender individuals interested in building a family.
Yes. So I want to preface this because this is a broad question and I'm going to answer it generally, but how we would treat each individual patient would really depend on their particular circumstances, including their age, where they were in their transition process, whether or not they were on gender affirming hormone therapy. And later on, when there are questions, I'm happy to talk about the specifics. But for now, I'll just give kind of a general overview of what options are available for transgender folks who want to preserve their fertility. And I think the easiest way to think about it is that there are options for individuals who have sperm, and there are options for individuals who have eggs. So for individuals who have sperm, we can freeze sperm and to preserve fertility. And what we have to figure out is how to get that sperm. Now, if the person feels comfortable and is able to collect a sample either at our office or at home, they can just bring it in and we can freeze it. If not, then we can refer them to our urology colleagues who can either help them be able to collect a sample, or they can actually do very small, minor sperm retrieval procedures where they can actually directly collect the sperm from the testicle and freeze it. And depending on how much sperm there actually is, later on, when the person would like to start their family, that sperm can be used either for inseminations or for IVF. So that's kind of broadly speaking the options for individuals with sperm. For individuals with eggs, the options are mainly to freeze eggs or freeze embryos. And to do that, you would basically go through the process of IVF, where we would have the person self-administer injections that stimulate the ovaries. The ovaries would then produce multiple eggs, and then when the time was right, we would do a small procedure in our office under anesthesia, same day, where we would remove the eggs from the ovaries and our embryology lab would freeze them. And then again, when the person was ready to start a family, we would thaw those eggs, create embryos, and that could be by using donor sperm or whatever the person wanted to do. And then that embryo could be transferred back into the patient, to a partner, if they had a partner with a uterus, or to a gestational carrier. And I guess I will just mention that there's probably a third group of adolescents that we sometimes see from Yale or CCMC. The options are essentially the same for them, except we need to work a little bit more closely with their pediatric endocrinologist because they may be on, different stage of their transition on puberty blockers and whatnot, but we can work with them as well.
We have a question from the audience. Let's go. I don't know, Kathy, maybe you can answer this. what sperm banks does the center approve of? If is that something you can answer?
Yes, we do have a group of sperm banks that our embryologist and lab director have vetted to have the highest standards of screening and laboratory technique. So we use Seattle Sperm Bank, California Cryo, Fairfax Sperm Bank, and Zytec. It's XYTEC. And I think that's it.
And Scott, I would add, I think we have brochures for all 4 of those banks at the New Haven Pride Center. So if you are located in New Haven, I know we have at least 3 of the ones that Kathy just mentioned, but we have brochures for those banks because actually the Center for Advanced Reproductive Services shared those with us because they had said that they were safe for LGBTQ clients to go to.
Excellent. Reva, this again might be a dumb question. Is there do frozen eggs or embryos, do they expire at a certain point? Do they are not as vital, or no? It's
No, we don't think so. I mean, the freezing technology is really excellent now, and we believe that eggs and embryos can stay frozen for many, many years, maybe indefinitely.
Wow, that's fantastic. Okay, anything else you'd like to add, Doc?
It's the circumstances of each patient are different. So eventually, if people in the audience have specific questions about hormones and how we handle that, then I'm happy to address it when it comes up.
Okay, excellent. All right, we're moving on to Doug. On June 1st, Governor Lamont signed the Connecticut Parentage Act into law. Can you explain to us exactly what that is?
Yes. So let me start by just saying what parentage is, which is the legal recognition of the parent-child relationship. And a lot flows from that, because if you're a legal parent, you have a right to parenting time or custody. You have an obligation to financially support the child until they're 18. You also have the right to put your child on your health insurance. So the definition of who is a parent is really important to a lot of rights and responsibilities that a lot of people take for granted. And so Connecticut's laws were fairly outdated and had not been revisited in decades, and suffered from some problems that probably are not surprising. They were very much based on marriage. They were very much based on marriage of different sex couples. And if you're in that paradigm of married different sex couples, they were also heavily based on biological parenthood. And so what the Parentage Act does is overhaul Connecticut's parentage laws to be much more in line with the way people, the whole range of people in the state, are forming families today. And so I'll just mention a few important aspects. One, it makes the parentage law gender neutral. So no longer will we use terms like husband and wife and mother and father and paternity and maternity. Instead, we just talk about parents and parentage and individuals. And that's helpful for same-sex couples, but it's also helpful for the trans parents that Reva was talking about, because one does not, one's gender designation does not matter for one's ability to satisfy a pathway to parentage. So a person who gives birth can establish parentage by giving birth. It doesn't matter whether they're identified as a woman or a man. The other thing it does is it opens a lot of paths to parentage for non-genetic or non-biological parents. And that includes people who have children through assisted reproduction at places like CARS. And so previously, Connecticut's law limited access to parentage for couples engaging in assisted reproduction other than surrogacy to married couples. And the law used the terms husband and wife. And now instead, the law provides that individuals who consent to assisted reproduction with the intent to be a parent of the child will be treated in law as a parent of the child. And that's really essential to the families that Reva and Kathy are serving, so that they don't have to have uncertainty about their legal status. And another important aspect of the law that is relevant to things that Kathy was talking about is that the law provides a lot more guidance about what surrogacy arrangements should entail. And so Connecticut actually has been a leader on legal recognition of intended parents who have children through surrogacy. That wasn't because of a law, it was because of a Connecticut Supreme Court decision from 2011. And the court had allowed intended parents to be recognized as legal parents, regardless of whether they were in a same-sex couple, regardless of whether they were married, and regardless of whether they were genetically related to the child. And the Connecticut Parentage Act carries that forward, but it also includes a lot more guidance about what a surrogacy agreement has to include, what the rights are of the individuals, including the rights of the person serving as the surrogate. And a lot of those provisions actually were vetted through doctors at CARS who gave us helpful information about what best practices were in the profession now, so that we make clear that a person serving as a surrogate, for instance, has rights regarding termination of pregnancy, selective reduction, method of delivery, multiple embryo transfer, the kinds of things that are important to actually codify, as well as representation by a lawyer, independent of the intended parents. So the surrogacy provisions actually, in some ways, reflect what Connecticut had been moving towards, but are more comprehensive. And then the rest of the law is brought up to date with what we had been doing with surrogacy, which is saying it doesn't matter whether you're married, it doesn't matter whether you're LGBTQ, it doesn't matter whether you're a man, a woman, non-binary. You should have access to parentage that actually reflects the way you're forming your family. And now our law really is going to do that starting January 1st.
Oh, so it hasn't gone into effect yet. It goes into effect January 1.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. And so this is really good news for the community.
Yeah, so one really important thing for LGBTQ parents to be aware of, and this is with respect to assisted reproduction other than surrogacy, is that same-sex couples, female same-sex couples who are having a child through assisted reproduction are going to be recognized as parents by law, regardless of whether they're married, and regardless of whether they're a biological parent. That was not true under existing Connecticut law. But more importantly, they're going to be able to establish their parentage by signing a simple administrative form, which is called an acknowledgement of parentage. So right now, when an unmarried woman gives birth to a child in Connecticut and in every state in the country, she is presented with an acknowledgement of paternity. And she and the man who says he's the biological father can sign that acknowledgement, and it establishes the man's parentage. And it has the force of a judgment, like from a court. And other states have to treat it as valid. And what our law does starting January 1 is it changes the acknowledgement of paternity to an acknowledgement of parentage. And it makes it available not only to genetic parents, but to non-genetic parents who use assisted reproduction, not only to different sex couples, but to same-sex couples, and to both married and unmarried couples. So for a same-sex couple, let's say you have a lesbian couple who has a child using donor sperm, and one woman gives birth, and the other woman is the non-biological parent. They will be able to sign in the hospital an acknowledgement of parentage that establishes both of them as legal parents. And why is that so important? Because a lot of same-sex couples right now in Connecticut are doing adoptions where the non-biological parent is adopting her own child, essentially. That costs money, it takes time, and it's humiliating to have to adopt your own child. And so now the law actually is going to allow people to use this establishment of parentage. And just to follow up on something Kathy was talking about, there's also situations where in a lesbian couple, one woman is the birth mother and the other is the genetic mother. And in those situations, in Connecticut, if the women were unmarried, the state of Connecticut was not treating them both as legal parents. But now both married and unmarried couples who do that will be able to establish their parentage through an acknowledgement of parentage. And so two things that I just want to note. One, this is great for unmarried couples. People should not have to get married in order to be parents of their children. Straight people don't, and LGBTQ people shouldn't have to either. But it's also good for married couples, because married lesbian couples in Connecticut are still doing adoptions, because even though you both get put on the birth certificates do not establish parentage. They are just evidence of parentage. And other states do not have to treat you as a parent just based on the birth certificate. And so you can now do an acknowledgement starting January 1st, just as an unmarried couple will be able to. And that acknowledgement under federal law gets what we call full faith and credit from other states. And so other states have to treat you as a parent when you have that acknowledgement of parentage. The other thing I just want to note is that for a lot of families who haven't done adoptions because they haven't gotten around to it because they're caring for a small child, or they can't afford to do it, or things just go by the wayside, you will be able to use the acknowledgement to establish parentage for a child who's already in this world. And so people will be able to get acknowledgements of parentage from the Department of Public Health beginning on January 1st, and use those forms to establish parentage if they haven't done an adoption already.
Was this a difficult law to get passed? How much work went into this?
It was a lot of work, but the nice. So we started working on it. We first introduced it in 2019, and then in 2020 we were derailed by COVID, of course. And we got it done this year with help from wonderful supporters like the New Haven Pride Center and CARS, and from families who testified in support of the bill. But I will say, so while it was a lot of work, it was a 177-page bill. We worked with courts and agencies to make sure that it was really tailored to Connecticut. But once people understood the stakes, only one legislator voted against the bill in the House or the Senate. And so that really and it had bipartisan support with ranking Republican members of the Judiciary Committee co-sponsoring the bill. And so people understood this was good for families in Connecticut, and they understood that it helped LGBTQ families be treated with the respect that they deserve. So while it was a heavy lift, it enjoyed widespread support. And I think it's important to understand that the judicial branch, the courts in Connecticut, the probate courts, the Department of Children and Families, the Department of Social Services are all supportive of this, and were instrumental in getting it done. And so now we have to make sure, as Patrick was saying at the start, that the laws are implemented and enforced. But because these folks were so instrumental to the law, they're going to make sure, the judicial branch, the probate court, that the procedures that need to be in place, the forms that need to be there when people go to them come January 1, they're going to be prepared.
Excellent. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think I'll just say, there's great lawyers in Connecticut that are doing this work and who represent LGBTQ families. We're continuing to work. GLAD, the LGBTQ law firm in Boston, is working with me to educate the community in Connecticut. And so it's still always a good idea to talk to people, to talk to lawyers about what your rights and obligations are under the law, and they will be able to advise you. But our hope is that obviously some people are going to have situations that need more tailored legal services, but our hope is that going forward, things are going to be a lot more streamlined and a lot less expensive and time consuming for people.
And it make us feel good. How Connecticut, I think we've touched on this. We're doing pretty good in terms of the nation, right?
So I think this is one of the very best LGBTQ inclusive laws in the country. And if you look at states that now are making these acknowledgements available to same-sex couples, we now are joining Maryland, Nevada, California, Washington, Vermont, Rhode Island, Maine, and Massachusetts. So we're in good company, and we're really being a leader on this issue.
And again, if I go to a state that isn't,
they have to treat it as valid.
They have to treat it.
Yes.
That's great news. Okay. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Now we're moving on to the moms.
Scott, really quick, can I throw something in before you move to moms?
Yes, absolutely, Patrick.
I just want to say a big thank you to Doug because I know how much of a heavy lift this was. And I also just want to throw out the fact that it's so even more important that we have this law after the Supreme Court ruling today that basically said LGBTQ people cannot adopt children. And I'm forgetting now, I think it was in Philadelphia that this happened. But it was a big thing that happened today. And the fact that this law is in Connecticut is going to ensure not that kind of a Supreme Court decision would happen in our state Supreme Court, but it makes sure families are protected. And I want to thank, as a hopefully future parent, Doug, for opening so many doors and just highlight the fact that this law really protects also heterosexual, straight, cisgendered couples just as much as LGBTQ couples.
So, and let me just add to that. So thanks, Patrick. I mean, one important motivation here was that, we do have a Supreme Court that is not composed of the justices that decided landmark cases like Obergefell that gave the right to marry to same-sex couples. And so it was important to lawmakers in Connecticut to make sure that the rights of LGBTQ people as parents are secure and don't depend on whatever our Supreme Court might decide.
Excellent. Okay, Rebecca and Steph, how are you?
Good, Scott. How are you?
Excellent. Talk to us about your personal family building journey.
Go ahead.
So, first, thank you all for this opportunity to be here is like super awesome. And if I could be an advocate and a voice for this population of people, then, well, that makes my insides very, very warm. So, our personal family building journey, as you guys know, we started dating 7/17/17, got engaged 8/18/18, got married 9/19/19. Yes, kudos to me. Right. But I think that the reality was we were very, very close friends even prior to starting to date one another 4 or 5 years ago. And we knew we wanted kids. She already has a child, 17 now.
Just graduated high school.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Yep.
And we knew that eventually that was going to be in our plan. A lot of the folks that already spoke mentioned the insurance debacle. I'm fortunate enough to work for the state. I didn't then. So I said to myself, I will scoop crap for the state of CT so that we could afford to do something such as this. Adoption, it was very expensive to consider as well. And we wanted to feel that sense of connection. So right after we got married, we started having a lot of conversations. And I think this kind of bleeds into the second question, Scott, on how did you get started? If there's folks in the audience that is anything like me, I did not go to doctors to take care of the parts of me that are woman-like. I just didn't. I wasn't active with men, so I said to myself, you know what? I don't have to go, and that's not very good. Don't let me lead by example. Anyway, so we had went to our OB, which I'm not even sure who
we
is.
Found Dr. Routher here in our area, and she's the one who suggested cars for us and gave us a brochure, and we called, and now almost a year later, we've been working with Kathy, who we absolutely adore and love and has been nothing but phenomenal through everything.
Yeah, I think it's important, though, that we did decide that the shared conception. Rebecca was comfortable that, we only have one child in the future. We didn't want to going in that we're going to expect multiples. She has a genetic child, but and again, if there's anybody like me out there, I had no desire to carry my lifestyle. I just didn't want any part of that. So we met with a social worker to discuss, is this the option that you folks are confident on? And how did you guys decide that? How do you feel about that? And it's all about feelings. Don't ignore feelings. You have to talk about those feelings, the scared feelings, the unsure feelings, the confident feelings, and that's what's going to drive you to remain engaged. It's not easy, even meeting with the social worker. So then we started, and I met with Dr. Benediva, spoke with Kathy. The insurance got all straightened out on their end, which was a complete relief. And I got my eggs extracted, and everything was very seamless. There's ups, there's downs, but at the end of the day, I think your driving force is support by the center, each other, family, friends.
And by those who don't know, just to re-clarify, like shared conception is we used her egg, donor sperm, and then I'll carry. So.
Okay.
Yep. So that was something I have never heard of before until the center and until everything went through.
And where are you in the process now? How?
So we're still in the process for, like, Steph got her eggs extracted and everything. And we got eggs. They were inseminated and frozen. So my process is quite different than Stephanie's. A lot of hormones, a lot of up and downs. We've, just really learned a lot. We have a certain amount of eggs, so many cycles. So we have gone through one, and it the first time didn't go through, which we kind of expected, kind of knew. So we're just working on the next stages. Going through like my cycles and, going off of a regular cycle or a medicated cycle, which is they assist with certain hormones and things like that. So we're still in the process. We're still chugging along. It's not always easy, but the end result is definitely going to be worth it.
That's fantastic. What have you learned along the way that you think you could share with other couples out there who are thinking of embarking on this journey?
You want to go first?
You can go.
Thanks. For me personally, it seems so overwhelming. Like when we first started talking with Kathy, it was the emails and videos and meetings with social workers and going through sperm banks. But as much as you get everything kind of you feel all at once, the CARS breaks it down for you. So it literally is step by step. They'll give you all the information. And then it's like, okay, step one is we want to do this first. And they get you through that. And then step two. So I think just being overwhelmed, we weren't afraid to ask a lot of questions. We weren't afraid to, as Kathy can attest, constantly email saying, okay, we're not sure about this. Before we move on, can we do this? So it was just really learning and taking in all the information, because a lot of it I wasn't aware of. Like, yes, we knew we needed sperm, but just going through like the vetting process and how everything works.
Yeah. And I think be honest with yourself and your partner, because it's definitely challenging, and take your time and recognize that it's okay to be upset. It's okay to be frustrated, and try not to let those times inhibit your ability to be hopeful. There were very challenging times, and don't ignore those challenging times. Communicate with each other, be there for each other. We made little projects out of it, to be honest with you. It was like we were at Chili's like constantly, because every time we wanted to escape reality and talk about that reality, because it really does seem so surreal. They do walk you through every part, and they're very supportive.
The people at Chili's?
No. The people at the center. But we and Chili's actually at this point. But we even went there when we were going through the sperm banks, and take the time with that too. I can speak for us. We spent the extra little money to unlock some profiles. Don't just do things spontaneously. If you're unsure, ask. If you're uncertain, wait. And you'll know when that time is right. And I can't strive enough. Hope is the best of things, possibly. And no good thing ever dies. You're driven on hope.
And a big thing is it can become all consuming, because you just want to get it done, and like you want answers, and you want the next step, and when can we do this? And we just kind of remember that you still have a life and things to do, and that like Steph said, to take your time and research it, but also to kind of relax and just be like, okay, today we're just not going to talk about it. We're going to do something else, and trust the process, which is kind of hard because you want answers and you want to know the next steps and you want to get ahead, but they really know what they're doing for obvious reasons, but it really is, it can become consuming, and it's just it's
cumbersome. I think, something that, and this is certainly no disrespect, everybody experiences situations very differently, right? So all of our thoughts, feelings, opinions, attitudes about things are how we interpret what we're experiencing. And for us, I don't know if there's a way that the center could have warned what I might feel as a result of, or what she might feel as a result of, but the support services are there. Even with the medication regimens, you're going to think you can't do it.
Yeah. And
let me tell you,
you can.
You
Trust me, you can. And the big thing is it's overwhelming, but for us too, for those that have a support system, we heavily relied on talking a lot out with our families, just because to educate them on what this is, why we want to do it. This is what the center does, but to also feel validated, because we can validate each other as much as we want, but for them to say, like, listen, you guys are doing okay, like, take a breath, take a breather, because when you get those regimens of medicine and everything that you have to do, your head wants to explode. But it's really not that difficult, because like I said, Kathy has literally handheld us through the whole thing, and it's just been such an amazing experience.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys like to share?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us. This is great.
It's our pleasure. It's been very enlightening. Kath, can we go back to you for a second? I just want to, if insurance doesn't cover the cost, is it a complete out-of-pocket expense for the people who are coming in?
It can be a complete out-of-pocket expense. We do work with several loan companies that offer fertility loans that are really pretty easy to get, from what I'm told.
A fertility loan.
Low bar of eligibility, which is great. There's also multiple grant programs within the state, and there's one in particular, the Nest Egg Foundation offers a grant or several grants every year of $10,000 per patient or per couple for families or partners who have not had children before. It's a fantastic organization, and the application process is actually opened right now. So it's the Nest Egg Foundation. If you have not had children before, we urge you to apply. It's $10,000. You don't need to pay it back. It goes directly to your fertility care. And it's a huge bonus.
That's awesome. And, I understand I've had a former partner of mine met somebody new, and they ended up going ahead with the child, and it can be a very expensive proposition. So you gotta know that going in.
Yeah, it can be very expensive, I think, in particular for the men. So I was rethinking my answer a little bit of who is it harder on. I think it's a toss-up. It can be quite expensive for men. But what I'd like to say and encourage people to do is try to get comfortable talking about your situation, talking about your desire to build a family. Lots of times your close friends, or like I said before, friends of a friend, or my friend's neighbor has always talked about being a gestational carrier. And I just happened to talk to Patrick today and then say, oh, I met this great guy who his partner, and he would like to build a family. And I tell my sister, whose neighbor has always wanted to be a carrier. That cuts the cost a great deal.
Okay.
So just be open, talk. People are really receptive. More receptive than one might think. And I think there's people out there who are simply good people wanting to help other people, which certainly can diminish the cost a bit.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, Patrick, yes.
I was going to ask another question of Kathy, just because,
Sure.
So I know that the technology now exists for an HIV positive gay man to be able to have conceive children. And I was curious if the Center for Advanced Reproductive Services actually does work with HIV positive clients, just because I know that process now exists, which was like so exciting when I heard that, because I didn't know that was even a thing. So I just thought I would ask that question just for anybody who's watching who might be positive.
Yeah, so yay. We do use that technology, and it really comes down to sperm preparation. There's a special sperm prep that Reva can probably speak to this more than I can in the medical jargon, but it eliminates most, if not all, of the risk of transmitting HIV through the sperm. So yes, that is a very real possibility, and it's happening.
Wow, that's terrific too. All right, would anybody else like to add anything? Doug, Reva, the ladies?
Just a quick side note. Sorry, Scott. For like what we went through with the sperm banks, and like Kathy said, each one is different. So we did a lot of research on what would work best for us. We ended up going with California Cryobank. They were fantastic, but again, like, don't let it overwhelm you. But just going through and making sure that you really research and have the answers. And if you don't, just ask questions, because that was a big thing to us, is we were looking for specifics on like our backgrounds, and just to make sure, because biologically, like, it will not be mine. So we wanted to get the best traits. And as silly as this sounds, they had the best options, maybe more, and their system was a little bit more user friendly. So it's really what you're comfortable with selection wise as well.
And it's all done. You didn't have to. Do you have to go there, or you do it? No,
Right online.
Right online, and
All
they
online.
have. And they have where you can sort, like, through, some of them have pictures of like when they were kids, some of them don't. And like Stephanie said, if you pay a little bit more, which we did, you can unlock certain things like bios and how they asked questions and how they answered them. You can have access to baby pictures if they're available. And we just decided not to go with an open donor. We wanted it closed, which means like there's no reaching out. Like it's just no contact.
No contact.
No contact. Yep. And then you have the option of contact with other ones. And we went through all of that with the social worker that we met when we started this journey, because that's part of it, to make sure, that we were okay with that.
And how is your 17-year-old dealing with all of this?
It's weird.
Yeah, it's weird for him. I mean, he thinks I'm old. So I'm 6 years older. So I'm so he just thinks it's weird. I mean, he's had me for a long time, but he is, I think, genuinely excited, but he's a 17-year-old boy. So even if he was overly excited, we wouldn't be able to tell.
Right,
But
exactly.
I think he just finds it odd, and we explain to him, different parts of your life, and this is what happens. And but he's supportive. I mean, he asks about appointments, and he knows when Kathy calls, if to leave us alone and let us take the news like the first time. And he's been good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think just one more final comment, Scott. Don't feel weird. Because it does seem, I don't like to use the word, especially coming from somebody such as myself. I don't like to use the terms, this is not normal or it's abnormal, but you unintentionally kind of, you internalize that.
This is our normal.
Babies come from love.
Yep.
Yeah.
Babies come from love.
And Patrick, I think what you said earlier too is, just because it's not normal for somebody else doesn't mean it's not normal for us. We all just want the same thing. And whether, how you have it doesn't matter. So because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's not right. You just need to either ask the questions, much like our families did, because they weren't sure. So you had a baby out of love. It doesn't really matter how it happened.
Right. Kathy, what percentage of the people that are coming to the cars are gay, LGBTQ? Do you have any idea? Is it a large percentage, or?
It seems like it's getting larger by the day. For perspective, we've assisted with 15,000 births, and 6,000 of them have been through the
Wow.
LGBTQ community.
Okay, that's pretty impressive.
So, yeah. I'd like to jump on to Stephanie and Rebecca and just say two things. I probably already forgot one of them. I wanted to make the distinction that CARS does have a PhD on staff. Dr. Kim Crone is our psychologist. She's not a social worker, not that there's anything wrong, but I think that's something
Sorry about that.
No. But I think it's something that sets CARS apart, that we do have a staff psychologist who helps with the screening and the selection of donors. And also, if needed, supports people during the more difficult times or times of uncertainty. And the last thing I wanted to say was that I loved what Patrick said about the fact that we don't need particular policy. We are people treating people, which we wholeheartedly agree. And with that being said, know that we're not perfect, but we are always open to learning. We want to know how best to serve you. And if we're, like I've said this before, not hitting the mark, we want you to tell us, because we really want to. So please just feel open to communicate.
Okay. Doug, what's on your agenda? What's your next battle?
So I do not have one. I'm actually going to take a little bit of time after this 3 years, but I will say that there are folks in Connecticut who are working on fertility equality issues. And so some of the questions we've been talking about with insurance, there are nascent efforts in the state to try to get better protections for LGBTQ family building. And Kathy was talking about, the fertility coverage. There's been a lot of coverage by insurance carriers for what we call medical infertility, but not for what we call social infertility, which is what affects LGBTQ people. And so that involves getting private insurers to change their policies, but there's also state legislation that can do some of that. And so there are people in the state that are beginning to do that work, some of whom were very involved in passing the Parentage Act.
That's wonderful. And Riva, if I may ask you a question, how did your path take you to where you are right now?
Well, I knew from early on that I wanted to be an OBGYN, but I don't know. But my younger sister has a condition where she'll never be able to have her own biologic children. And so from an earlier age, she's much younger than me. She's like 10 years younger than I am. That was something that my family and I had been talking about a lot, and it just became an interest of mine. So that kind of led me here.
Well, thank God for you. That's what I have to say. And thank God for all of you. Thank you so much. Patrick, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think this has been a very educational, informative, and fun event.
Yeah, no, and I want to thank everyone here again for your time, your energy. Special thanks to obviously Riva and Kathy for making so many families who want to have children as part of their family units help make that a reality. Doug, again, big shout out to you for thank you for all the work over the last, what seems like a very long time. I think you and I met about this bill like in my first year at the Pride Center.
That's right.
And so it's amazing to see Connecticut yet again take a stand and make a stake in the ground that we will be a leader on LGBTQ plus rights and issues. And Rebecca and staff, thank you for being here and telling your story and giving hope to many people out there who maybe want to have children but don't even, it's overwhelming to even consider. I want to give also a shout out to, I don't know if they're watching, but we did a very similar program to this at the center 2.5 years ago. And one of them, it was a lesbian couple, and they are now pregnant thanks to CARS. So, these events do make a difference, and being able to hear from parents specifically or soon to be parents it makes a difference for folks to feel like they can too take that journey. And of course, Scott, you did amazing, as there was, of course, no expectation otherwise. So, I know I am supposed to. I did pop it up a couple times, but I want to pop it up one more time. If you do want to get more information about the Center for Advanced Reproductive Services, their website is yukonfertility.com. And Kathy and everybody there is super accessible. So I just want to put that up one more time. I also want to put up, if you do want to learn more about the New Haven Pride Center or any of our upcoming services, programs, activities, we are now open to the public. So our hours, you can go to newhavenpridecenter.org. I also want to do one last shout out that this event is going to be on our YouTube channel, which is just YouTube/C/New Haven Pride Center. You can also catch all of our other programs that we've been doing. We've now done about 160 virtual events since the start of the pandemic, and you can go through our library there and enjoy most of them. So thank you all again. And I'm gonna end our broadcast, but hope everybody has a great rest of their night.
Thank you, Pat.